Okay. Um, we did it.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
No, I might have been on my end. Because hold on, I just gotta put it in my thing here and hopefully not hang up on us. Because I don't know why it wasn't working. So to everybody watching now, we just tried to do this for like, what is it, 5 minutes now, and something wasn't working. Clearly, we are not tech professionals.
All good.
But good to see you. Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day, Emily. I'm thrilled to be here this morning.
I know. Thanks for taking the time. And I feel like it's so worth it because this is something I'm so passionate about, right? Like, you know, people may be like, why are you doing this on Mother's Day? And it's part of prioritizing ourselves, right?
Yes.
Things that we enjoy doing, and then we can pour back into our children. So I'll just start with introductions here. I'm Emily Sylvester, founder of Motheroffactapp, and a registered dietitian and lactation consultant that has been practicing for over 10 years, and recognizing that mental health and self-care almost always comes first, even when we're talking about baby feeding. So I'll let you go.
And yeah, perfect. Awesome. So I'm Christine Anastasia. I'm founder and owner of Christine Anastasia Coaching and Consulting. And I'm a master certified life coach for moms, working moms. And I help moms basically prioritize themselves and really take care of their well-being while they're raising their young children. And I do that through mindset strategy, lifestyle changes, and daily habits. So I'm really happy to be here.
Super, super important. And I think we've talked about this before, but how did you come into doing this work?
Yeah, so hello pandemic. I feel like it's been a long 2 years, but back in 2019 was sort of a critical moment for me where I was at like the ultimate burnout stage. At the time, I was commuting into Boston with an hour-and-a-half commute with 2 kids under 3, and I was burning the candle from both ends. And I think like many working moms and moms even that are home with their children, it's very hard to recognize how to get out of sort of the daily chaos and the daily spreading yourself thin and giving to everybody else, whereas you're sort of getting depleted and crumbling inside. So it was a big moment for me that I needed to dig myself out of, you know, a bit of postpartum depression, a bit of postpartum anxiety, and just all the things that happen when you transform as a mother. And at the time that was just 2 kids. And now I have a third, which we welcomed in January.
Yay! Congrats.
Thank you.
So we are here today on Mother's Day to talk about plugging in and prioritizing. And I think it's a super, super important topic, as I said before. But before we get into the areas of how you can plug into yourself and the 5 different buckets, I would say, if you call them different types to do that, I feel like my biggest difficulty is setting a goal or figuring out what I need to do and then actually like following through with that and creating that plan. And I know in one of your blogs, and sometimes you talk about the time blocking, I think it's called, right? Yeah. How doing that as a mom can help us to actually move through with things. Would you want to start with talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I just sort of want to say today, because I know Mother's Day is sort of can be a loaded and complicated thing for a lot of moms for a lot of different reasons, is self-care, which I feel like is also another loaded term. I like to call it self-love, because basically self-love is not glamorous and neither is self-care. So when we're talking about, you know, daily habits and working into things in small steps, that's sort of the name of the game for me and for when I help my clients, because you're not going to be able to get anywhere if you're in sheer overwhelm, which we've all been in motherhood. So a lot of women right now are working hybrid, they're working remotely, or you're at your, regular in-person job, or maybe you're a stay-at-home mom. What I want moms to understand is that when you look at your daily schedule or your week-long schedule or your month-long schedule, you're basically making small increments of time to do something for yourself. And it's both the intention of doing that and starting small. So for instance, let's say you're looking at just like your day. Your day is full already. You're bringing your kids to daycare. You have a million things. Your husband works full time. You work full time. You want to try to find like 10 to 15 minutes and you put it somewhere within your day that you feel like is doable. And then from there, you also try to sprinkle that throughout the week. So you're not trying to like every single day try to hit this milestone. And what will happen too is you're going to have a week where your whole family comes down with COVID. And then you're going to give yourself grace and say, okay, like I've started this practice of trying to find 20 minutes a day and I'm building. And this is the week that it's not going to happen. And you kind of shift your mindset to say like, this is a week off, but what can I do to be gentle with myself or be kind to myself just to get back on track? So what's going to happen is whether it's 20 minutes or you build up to an hour, you're being unapologetic about guarding that time. And it doesn't have to be long. Like I know most moms, you might get 20 minutes, you might get an hour. Most moms want like 4 hours or like a day to themselves, and you just don't get it.
No,
and
never.
So what you're doing is you're building the muscle of just pouring into yourself a little bit. And it's not glamorous and it's not probably even going to fill you up in that moment, but the accumulation of putting yourself first and doing it on a weekly basis is going to help you. And this is what I did for myself when I burned out. I was like, inch by inch, I'm going to dig myself out. And one of the first things I did was pelvic floor therapy. So like, we'll talk about the 5 categories later, but that's what I'm going to start with. Then I'm going to go on to therapy. Then I'm going to go on to the next thing. And you don't need to do all of the things at once. It's just like putting that first step in to put it in your calendar and to put it in your week. And you have to do it just like you do swim lessons for your kids or like anything else that you book for your family.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. And so we are going to cover 5 ways, 5 categories, right? But it sounds like as moms are listening to this now or later, maybe thinking about one of the most heart triggering things for them right now, categories, and maybe just starting with that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That those 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever we can not fit in, right? But slide
Right.
to what is already going on.
And the thing that like you have to remember is like people's lives today are really busy and motherhood is extremely challenging. Like most young modern working parents, both partners are working full time and most people are like, I don't have time for that, or like something else flies in or there's another excuse. And that's where like for me, I made this decision, and I hope all of you will join me today in like making this mark and draw in the sand. Become unapologetic about guarding 20 minutes of time or an hour or something to fill your well, because if not, your boss is going to take that meeting. Somebody else is going to have something else that requests of you, and it just keeps piling on. But like listening to a podcast, like I'm a big fan. I just started, I went onto YouTube and I found this like quick 20-minute nap meditation. Now, whether you're working remotely or even at your job, like throw that on for 20 minutes, like block out everything and just take a 20-minute nap to like get the sensory and like everything else in the world off. And it's helped me. Like I do it like here and there. It's like a nice kindness thing that I can do for myself.
I love that. That. I'm lucky enough to be able to work with a coach now, coming to the realization that this is so, so important, working on Motheroffactapp and having 3 kids and to be a wife and a friend and all of that. And the other day we were talking about the open space, how that gives me anxiety. And then I end up just like wasting that because I'm so anxious about not doing what I need to do. So we legit blocked. It's like what Emily wants time.
Yeah.
Right. And so I feel like that's where these buckets would kind of fill in, like even starting there.
Yeah.
If moms or parents are visual, right? Like you're
Right.
actually putting it in.
Yeah. And I think like these categories that we're going to talk about, this is like a moment, and Mother's Day is the perfect day to sort of look at this, is like, what's something that you've been sort of like pushing aside that like, you know, you'd like to check out or do, but you keep saying like, oh, you know, I got all these activities for the kids, or, you know, my husband's doing this, or I got something else. It's like everybody has that little nagging thing. It could be like a workshop. It could be, you know, you have some physical pain that you want to tend to, or you want to do a girls' weekend, or create something creative. Like we all have that within us, and we are creators, and it's sort of remembering how to get back there. And you, like I said, like it's not about doing all 5 categories. You can sort of pick and choose. But what I will say is, just like Mother's Day today, this is a one-time singular event. Like you're not going to meet your needs in a day. So it's all about that like incremental pouring into yourself. And there's going to be stuff that always falls apart, like the house of cards. It's not about the quantity, it's about the intention. And it's sort of like when you do one of these activities, you're saying, I love myself. I love all the parts of me that are good, challenging, all of that, but you're doing something for yourself and you're breathing in that sustainability. And I like to think of it like sometimes you're going to have a rough week, and you just look at it as like progress, not perfection. Like we're all sort of this like perfection mode, you know, and it's not realistic. Like we as parents, like you don't get a lot of time for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Progress over perfection. I love that. So we do have kind of the 5 things or 5 buckets. So let's jump right into that. Focusing on that progress over perfection.
Yeah.
So think about, so maybe we can start by listing them all out right now, the headers, topics, whatever, and then go into 1 or 2 things as an example to fit into that progress over perfection and prioritize yourself within that for the attainable amount of time.
Yeah.
Does that sound good? Okay.
That sounds great.
So let's see, the 5 things. Let me know if I'm missing one, right?
Yeah.
We have physical health, mental health, connection, creativity or career or identity work, right? Because, you know, as moms, we do a lot for jobs, right? And it's not always career. Sometimes it's identity. Sometimes we're working on ourselves in addition to taking care of little humans.
Yeah.
And then spiritual or energy work, which sounds like it's different than that. Did I get 5? Was that 5?
Yeah. Yeah. And I like how you added in the identity, and also just sometimes you do things for just joy or no reason. Like any of these things too, you don't have to like set yourself up for like, oh, like, why am I doing this? Like, we need to remember that like sometimes you want to do something to make you happy, or like you want to feel good about. So we can kick off with physical, but there's one thing I also wanted to share that was sort of a pivotal moment for me. Working moms and moms in general on the motherhood journey, we often can live in 2 different places. And this was often me for a while, and I still have to kind of lean into the other way. You can lean into struggle mode or thrive mode. And every day that you wake up, you have a choice to either sit in the struggle soup, or you can try to choose a new thought or a new way to thrive in your day or thrive in your week or find something for you. So I spent a lot of time in struggle mode. I was like, oh, like this life is just rough. Like you have a couple of kids, you work all the time, and I'm just going to sit in struggle mode. And that story ended up being my narrative for several years. But I think today what I'd like to encourage moms and you know, in the very work that you do, is you can start small and live in strive and support and success. And Emily, I think you do so much work around setting up moms for success and support and being seen. And that's where like the magic happens. That's where your vibration comes back. So, you know, with like physical health, what's like something that you enjoy physically doing?
Being outside, right? And now that the seasons are changing here in New England, trying to just realizing that I don't have to do a cardio video for half an hour. I don't have to schedule a run, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just even like the other day, the snow had melted, and I was like, I'm going to take 3 laps around the yard.
Yeah.
And like that felt like such an accomplishment just because we hadn't been able to do that.
Right.
That's my example.
Exactly. And like, you know, sometimes we think about like the weekend and we're like, oh, we have so much to do. You got like grocery shopping, everything's already spoken for. One little like tactic I use with my husband sometimes if we've had like a really busy week is sometimes I'll just say like, where do you want your hour and a half and where can I get like an hour or an hour and a half? And within the weekend, we try to carve out that downtime. So like he might get a hike in the morning and then maybe I'll get something for an hour. And it sounds like you can get enveloped in just like the whole weekend and just nonstop catching up on laundry and stuff. By the way, you're never going to get through your laundry. Like I have so much that it's just like, who cares after a while? So like get in that walk, like text a friend and be like, let me get 45 minutes in. Like I said, like it could be a half hour. Everyone's lives are so busy that it's just like you said, getting out in nature, doing a couple laps, like you're going to feel it over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. So that
was physical.
Yes, that was physical. And I love just to drop in there too. That's also our like medical health too.
Mm-hmm.
So physical, if you are not feeling well, like you mentioned pelvic floor therapy, right? That can be part of a physical health goal. It doesn't have to be exercise, it doesn't have to be movement, because if the thing that's making you feel bad or hurting is enough to affect your daily life, but not enough to prioritize it, like that's still something to focus on. And I love it. You focus on.
Yeah. And just for the record, there are so many women that are either like early postpartum or like second or third kid that are walking around with like physical issues that they just haven't tended to. And like, I want to send out my empathy because I understand how difficult that is. Like I worked for an employer that wouldn't let me take off for appointments after I delivered, like, or I came back to work because I had already been out on maternity leave for 3 months. And I'm like, well, my body is like broken, and then you have to choose. So I was doing it late at night during bedtime because again, I became unapologetic about trying to chip away at wanting to get better. Like that's like the other thing is like when mom is doing well, the world is doing well. And it's like, this encompasses all those facets.
Love it. I love it. Absolutely. So the second thing or bucket is we'll go into mental health.
Yeah. So this is another one that I'm a big fan of just because, and I think last week was actually Maternal Mental Health Awareness Week. It's really important, I think, to put out there that all of us struggle with things mentally, like mental health, and whether you do therapy or you talk with a friend or whatever it is, like you need to know that like that's all of us. Like we don't need to hide. You don't need to be in a space where you're isolated about that. Like I was one of the people that fell through the cracks with like postpartum depression and anxiety, and it was like too little too late. But now I really advocate for women to keep connecting, to keep finding those support and resources. And I think there's a myriad of things you can do around that to sort of help you, but I think it's unique to each person.
Exactly. And I specifically, when I used to think as a new mom of mental health, it was like, am I losing my mind?
Yeah.
Like, that was and that's not it. It's more than that. It's like, am I able to connect with myself?
Right.
It can start as small as that when we think of mental health.
Yeah.
Thinking that it's not a diagnosis, right? It's not this huge realization that, we're going crazy or letting it get to that point. And so I don't know if like meditation falls into this, because I know there's another sector of like spiritual, right, where those kind
Yeah.
of meld a little bit together.
Yeah.
But recognizing now, doing a little bit of meditation myself to prioritize myself, I tie that in with mental health 100%. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I think definitely meditation could go into either bucket. The thing that came up for me right when you were saying that is how many young moms are living in fight or flight mode, and being sort of, your nervous system is just always like running. And I think what we're trying to do is sort of like unwind that a bit, because if you grow your family, like you're kind of in that mode for a while. So it's almost like we're taking time to figure out how to like bring down the levels and like try to find some like peace within. And that daily practice, or like putting that in your week, will help you over time. Like I think meditation, ways to sort of like be in nature. I'm a huge fan of acupuncture. It's helped me like over the years with just both depression and anxiety, my sleep. Like I know most moms don't sleep very well, even after your baby's sleep, whether that's in the first year or later on. It's just your body is accustomed to being that mama bear and like protecting and all of that. But there is something to be said about trying to like level yourself out and to try to find ways to just like, what's the word? Like balance a little bit.
Balance
Yeah.
and mental health 100%.
Yeah.
And finding the gray area that
Mm-hmm.
you're okay with. Mental health and balance is never black or white, especially being a stay-at-home mom,
Yep.
stay-at-home working mom, right? Which is a lot of parents now, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think like the world's all sort of like meshed together. And if we're not intentional about like, ooh, things are starting to get like a little weird here, where like I haven't done anything for myself, like pay attention to that voice and try to like find a moment to be like, okay, I have to get myself out of this, or shift a little bit. And it can be just sort of like, you know, no one rides a bike before having training wheels. Like you just have to sort of like remember like, okay, what category do I want to look at? What do I want to call a friend? Do I want to do one of these things? And you get right back on track. What happens that's like worse is like when you stay in that like struggle soup and you like sit in the burned out stage for so long. It's just harder to get out.
Right.
Yeah.
But realizing, it sounds from our conversation that realizing it, and you don't have to take a huge step, right?
Right.
It can be just, you know, maybe in times of transition, if
Yeah.
that's escalating my feeling of struggle, or the struggle soup that you say, which I love that term, just realizing that times of those transition are hard, and giving yourself mental space to realize that, and take 5 minutes or whatever your goal is to prioritize.
Yeah. And I think like, I just also want like moms, whether you're here in the United States or like wherever in the world, like all moms feel how taxing it is to like make these sacrifices of your body, your time, your space, like everything. It's like a hugely intense time in your life. And like most of us can't even think about yet when our kids are 18, 19 years old. Like that's just a different phase of life. So it's important to like find these connections now and to like support yourself through it. Like, you know, I'm not home with my kids all the time in the day. Like I'm working as well, but that can be overwhelming. Like you need to find time, even if it's pockets of time, to get together with another mom and her kids and just to like pour it out, like talk about it, and like do something to sort of help you on your journey. And also, you know, in dual income families, like push your partner a little bit to say like, you know, I need to do something creative for myself, or something different. It could be in any of those facets, because you deserve it. You really deserve it.
100%. 100%. And so I think we briefly grazed over spiritual, talking a little bit, but maybe we'll jump into that. And then we also started talking a little bit about connection.
Yeah. So I had kind of an aha moment when I was in like a really stressed state and struggling, as a working mom. And I came into like the spiritual space of like, how is my house running right now? And how does that relate to how my kids are behaving? Because I remember like my kids were kind of just as stressed as I was. And I was like, maybe I need to shift things up in my house. And, you know, sometimes the way your home sits in terms of clutter and like systems and all of that can really affect how you sort of do your daily life, and it affects your kids. So I sort of cleaned up my act in the kitchen area. Like I started to just like clear away tons of papers and like create more systems that would be more flow. You know, getting like charts for my kids where they know what's coming next. And believe me, I'm not like perfect in any of the sense of like Pinterest stuff. It's just developing ways to have flow in your house. And so, you know, whether it's a professional organizer, doing a mudroom, using some ways to create flow in your day and your life, it really impacts your kids because they see that, oh, mom is like, got this, like she's flowing. When I wasn't flowing, it was when I was leaving to go to Boston before 7 a.m. with 2 kids. And what I had to actually do in the end was make a lifestyle change. And that ultimately was my decision. But I think through this pandemic, I think a lot of moms are thinking about that, because what's your time worth and what is your stress level worth? Is it worth it to be like burning the candle from both ends and watching your kids be stressed while you're stressed? That was ultimately a call I made.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think not belittling ourselves or thinking negatively about the fact of making that decision, that raising our kids is one of the most important jobs to do to affect the future. You know, so I think as far as like spiritual and like being like, yes, it's okay. Like I don't have to feel bad about, you know, leaving my job or whatever society may or may not think about us, right?
Yeah.
It's also a huge factor of spiritual mental health.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to mention too, because like sometimes women I think need to see like the end result. It's hard to kind of go through that tough journey or that growth process. I've seen my clients do this in as little as 3 months. So sometimes you think like, oh, like I'm never gonna like get out of this like struggle survival mode. Like you know, it's hard for me when I hear like older parents say like, oh, you know, it's temporary, like it's just a phase. It's like, it's a really long fucking stage, you know, like
yes,
we're let's just be honest. Like when you have kids under 5 and you have a couple of them, like it's a long stage and there's several stages to go that you have to deal with. So when you are sort of looking at your overall well-being and the physical parts, the mental parts, the connections, and all of these pieces, even by doing like a couple of these throughout your week and you keep building up, it's exercising a muscle. You're gonna start to see like, wow, like this feels different. Like I'm meeting my needs of like things that make me feel good. That's why like they even talk about with like exercising, like the endorphin effect, like your body responds when you actually care for it, you know?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, what is the, I think career, creativity, community work, I think is one of the last ones.
Yeah. And we might have even touched on it too.
Yeah, 100%. All of these are really related, right?
Yeah.
I'm a person where I'm like, bucket, like this has to fall here, this most of the time, but it's amazing to see when we really center on ourselves and is like, how am I feeling the most overwhelmed? They could fall into a couple of these.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, and Emily, if you don't mind, I'll shine a light on you because I feel that you have lots of gifts that you're using really in real time. Like you're both a dietitian and you help mamas with, you know, all things feeding, and you are a mom of 3. Like you are taking the time in this moment to share your gifts with moms that need it and moms that really need to be seen. And I think that whether you are home with your children and you might be taking a pause from work or you're working full time, we all innately have gifts within us. 100%. And whether or not you sort of pay attention to them is another thing. but you can still pay attention to those gifts and those voices even when you're home with your children. And I actually really encourage you to do it and fight for it, because there are things that other people in the world need to hear from you. And it could be you're a painter, or it could be that you make baskets and like want to share that with others in your community. It could be all sorts of things, but don't suppress that. Like, I mean, when Emily reached out to me to do this today, I'm like, of course, like I want other moms that I'm surrounded with to feel that like there's a spark that's like deeply within you that wants to get out. And like, whether or not you're in a job that you are lukewarm about, like there's so much in that creativity part. I mean, shit, we all had kids. Like the womb is a creative portal of so much. And I just think that like, if you take away anything from today, take one of these pieces and run with it, and actually like just begin. I'd love to hear, like, after we do this live, like if there is something that hit for you that you want to get started with. Like, I think that would fill me and Emily up quite a bit to just hear where you want to go with it, you know?
100%. I love that. I love that. Hit on one piece. I think maybe it starts with, even today, tomorrow, sitting down with yourself, cup of tea, cup of coffee, and maybe doing one of the things we talked about, you know, whether it's out in nature, you know, reconnecting with yourself, I think is like, it's where it started with me, right? Yeah. You know, I decided to found a company with a newborn.
Yeah.
And that was crazy. And it took a while for me to realize that in order for me to make this be successful, that is where it has to start. 100%. Yeah. I love everything you said today.
Yeah.
And so, yes, everybody watching this now, take a second, even if your kids like mine are waiting downstairs to serve you French toast, they will get so much more from you, right? If you take those 5 minutes and start the small goals. So I think what I learned today, starting small, does not have to be a whole bucket list. I feel like that's appropriate term for what we talked about today. Yeah. Figure out what's affecting you now most that will make everything else, or a lot of things in your life, easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
And start from the top. From the top, start small. And
yes, and definitely, like, progress, not perfection. You're going to have weeks where like things get derailed. Be unapologetic about guarding that time for yourself. You're going to start to see yourself light up, and there will always be lots of kids screaming and diapers to be changed and laundry to be done. But like, if you don't guard that with your life, you're not going to fill yourself up. And like, that's what this is all about. Like, that's why Emily and I like thought, like, the plug-in, like, we need to like really have our vibration up. Like, we need, like, nobody's cup is running over. Like, let's be serious. We're just trying to fill our cups a little bit more. And that's where it all begins. And that's how we show up better, like, for our family, for our community, for our jobs, for like the world. Like, that's what we're trying to do. So yeah, I love everything that was from today. Like, it's a day of self-love. Like, forget like the Hallmark holiday. Like, I feel like if you were on today or you watch it later, it's a nice part to like carve out the space for like that sustainability track, because Mother's Day is one day, and like going to the spa or like doing a massage, like, then it's over. Then what are you going to do the rest of the 364 days? Like, you really, this is like a maintenance thing.
100%. 100%. I love all of this so much. So yeah, if you connected with this and you're like, I'm going to make one small portion of the day space for myself, decide this is an area that I need to plug in and prioritize, practice over perfection, send us a DM message, follow both of us. I'm at Motheroffactapp on Instagram mostly. And then I'm here with, if you want to plug yourself right now, Christine.
Yeah, so I'm at Village Coach Mama. I'm also on LinkedIn, Facebook, all the different things. So I'd love to hear if any of this resonated. You know, we're all working on this. Like, this is all just like a part of daily living as a modern parent, and it's challenging, and I don't want to sugarcoat that. Like, this isn't, you know, a space where I think anybody's getting like hours of time and outsourcing everything. Like, this is just about that intentional, like, starting small and beginning your journey of filling the different areas of your life that just need a little bit more love.
Yes. Yes. Love to everybody on Mother's
Yes.
Day and beyond. And we look forward to seeing you in our DMs. Drop off the message. Tell us what you think, because
Yeah.
who knows? I mean, this was fun. We just spent over a half an hour chatting. Maybe we could do this again. Let's
Absolutely.
think. And happy Mother's Day to you.
Same to you, Emily.
We'll see everybody soon.
Sounds good. Thanks again. Happy Mother's Day, everyone.
Happy Mother's Day.